My name's Jensen. I'm 35 years old. I've been skateboarding for about 25 years. Lucky enough to have been a professional skateboarder. And I also art direct the British skateboard company called SMiLe. I was at South Bank skating. I was a really keen kid, like as a skateboarder. There was no coolness going on there at all. It was like, I want to be sponsored. I used to write down tricks I could do, and I actually sent a letter to Flip once, like, these are the tricks I can do, can I get sponsored? But the time I actually got sponsored, I was at South Bank skateboarding, and it turned out that like the Panic team, Blueprint and Panic team guys were down. I think I did a switch flip down the 7 or something, and then I remember getting a phone call like a week later saying like, we'd like to flow you some boards, like come to my house and I'll give you some boards, and it started from there. Dan McGee, who was like the main guy at Panic Blueprint Skateboards at the time, he kind of agreed that like, yeah, okay, I was good enough to like push to the next level and get properly sponsored by the company, and then we went on trips. Before that, I went to boarding school for 2 years when I was like 11, and I also realised that I absolutely hated being away from home, and I had like severe anxiety at that age, but I was so young I didn't really know what it meant. I already had this real issue of like feeling homesick and stuff. So when I remember going on a trip, that feeling just came straight back. There was a trip to Athens, and it was a 2-week trip, and I was like really nervous about it. And so I was just like, if I take something from my bedroom there, I'll feel more connected to home. So I took my duvet cover to Athens in a bag. The thing is, it was always just about manageable, like, because I think when you're young, just get through it. But there were definitely like a lot of like finding it really hard to sleep, just over worrying, basically overthinking stuff, and just being in a constant state of like hyper alert. I remember going on a 4-star trip, and Mariano said, "Oh dude, these 2 weeks have flown by." And they were the slowest 2 weeks of my life. It felt like it was 6 months. Like every day was so hard to get through. I was like self-medicating with propanol to try and slow my heart rate down, hardly sleeping. You know, what's going on? I need to get help. Like, I can't function like this if every day is so difficult to get through. This isn't normal. When you feel that bad, the only person you can speak to is someone outside of that group. It does feel really scary, that. And now, luckily, more and more people are becoming more aware of mental health, and it's becoming less of a taboo to talk about. Yeah, the trip to China, the whole flight there, I was like trying to work out something in my head, like almost how someone with OCD would work something out. Like, as I've later come to learn, that's called magical thinking. And that was just a way of trying to cope without having any of the resources to know how to. And the first night, I just couldn't sleep. And the second night, I had this, for the first time in my life, I had a panic attack. This overwhelming sensation of like, oh my God, I'm completely stuck. I'm claustrophobic, like I can't breathe, I'm trapped. I had that same feeling of being a kid at boarding school. I just kind of wanted to ring my mum, fly a helicopter there and just save me. I knew I couldn't. I knew it was like, I'm an adult and I'm on a trip, and I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of people as well, because I'm with like my peers. So horrific, but I was in such a state at this point. I was just told Shire and Dan and Mark Baines, who were sharing a room, like, you need to help me get home. Like, I'm frantic and I can't, there's no logic going on in my head right now. I just need to be home. I need to be with some like people where I feel safe. I need to like see a therapist, or I need to get some help. I just need you to help me get home, because I was too scared to look up a flight on the internet in case there wasn't one for 2 days, because I was thinking like, how am I going to cope between now and then? So in the end, they helped me get a flight, and I just flew out, I think the next evening back home, and that was a kind of bit of a breakdown moment in my life, where I just sort of trying to put the pieces together after that took a long time, because I just felt so weird, like what happened and why. Saw therapy and saw a psychodynamic therapist for like a couple of years, and sort of it really helped, but this kind of problem recurred again later in my life, so it was quite scary as well. Like, it's not something I just fixed, and I've had to learn that in later life. As I got older, it's more like a form of, I've had to learn to become more accepting towards it. I saw CBT, which is known as like cognitive behavioural therapy, and I saw this really interesting guy who helped me a lot. My like adrenaline system can like fire quite quickly, so I can get quite frantic and manic. So CBT really helps you sort of understand how to cope with that part of your brain, because it teaches you to say, okay, cool, I can't skate tomorrow, good. And then by accepting that you can't, you give in a bit. I used to not be able to get the tube for a bit, and I was so scared I used to get off the tube all the time. The guy told me to get the tube at rush hour and have a panic attack if you feel like that's what you're worried about, because a lot of my anxiety is fear of fear. So it helped me challenge my worries and realise that actually I can kind of exude some sort of control over them a little bit more by being accepting and just letting them go through without trying too hard to like run away from them. I feel much more liberated from them now. I don't feel, when those thoughts come into my head, I feel much more equipped to like talk back to them, less scared of them. Feeling understood is like the most important thing in terms of like recovery, I think. So having people around you that like respect, you know, oh, he finds sleep hard, let's work out a way he can have his own bedroom. Not feeling embarrassed to ring up your sponsor and say, hey, would you mind like working out an Airbnb where I can have just a room with one other person in it or something. These little things can help. It's nice that I started a company with all my friends because yeah, you feel much more comfortable. We make these jokes like it's therapy sometimes going on trips because we're all quite like up for chatting about our sort of emotional situations, and it's quite a lovely experience. It's quite like unmasculine in the kind of conventional sense. It's quite like a feminine vibe. We're just like, yeah, cool, we're all feeling emotionally fragile at times and we're all there to talk to each other about it. Just be kind of open and supportive without being like directive and like, you should do this and that would be good for you if you did that, because it can often alienate people even more when they try those things out and then realise they don't work. Just showing that you're there for someone in like any way possible really, without being like solution based. There's a lot of help out there, it's just that you don't think there is because it's hard to find sometimes. There's so many different forms of therapy that can be really helpful. You could be surprised how many friends you've got that are there for you and willing to talk to you, and a lot of us through Ben have realised like we wish we'd been there for him more, or like understood how to be there for him more, which is part of the battle, is like letting people in and letting people know like finding life difficult, and having a conversation about it can be so helpful and constructive because you get a bit more of an objective point of view. Because if you're stuck in your head the whole time, it can be really, really scary. When I look back, I think like thank God I have had that help, because now I'm in such a stronger place and feel so much more confident. It's actually quite a brave thing to like go and look for help, even though it feels really like vulnerable at the time. It's a really good thing to do.